Admitted to practice, you may get a special license to be an advocate, but that there are not now requirements, unless I understand incorrectly, there are not now requirements for having to go to school after you become an attorney in Kazakhstan. If I understood from the website of the Kazakhstan bar, which my friend Amin might be able to click as slide number 1. I went through the Kazakhstan bar's excellent webpage and saw that your purposes are very much like ours in the New York State Bar Association, that we are a voluntary association of lawyers, now totaling about 75,000 lawyers in the state of New York alone. And one of the things that we try to do is provide good services to the public. And as part of that, we try to keep up our skills, both in terms of the skills of our actual area of practice. In my case, I am a specialized tax lawyer who does work connected with transferring wealth from one generation to another. But we also have to keep up certain ethical requirements so that we conduct ourselves properly and honorably represent our clients. These ethical requirements were as a result of the scandals in the 1970s connected with the administration of President Richard Nixon. If you've ever heard of the Watergate scandal, President Nixon was brought down because he and other people connected with his government were conducting improper spying activities, and were also lying to the Congress and to the judges about their activities. And there was a thought that American lawyers needed to have more training in the area of being honest and honorable. It's difficult, of course, if a lawyer doesn't want to be honest or honorable, to restrain someone like that, but at least they give us classes to try to make us behave. We have had, for many years, voluntary continuing education and ethical training for lawyers, but up until 1997, in the state of New York, we had no formal training. We had no formal requirements. I remember 30 years ago, I live about 150 kilometers north of New York City, and I went to Boston with my wife for a conference on estate planning. It was voluntary, some very big experts gave the panel. We stayed overnight, a couple of nights in a hotel, and toured Boston. But we did this voluntarily, expense out of our own pocket, and it was very expensive because I had to leave my house, go to Boston, very nice city if you haven't been to Boston, but still, I think it cost about $685 to do this meeting. So when you had to conduct your continuing education voluntarily, you had to pay it out of your own pocket, and you had to leave your office and go to some, in many cases, distant city to hear experts tell you about the law. Sometimes you could order a course book, but generally you had to go to a room like this, sometimes many hundred kilometers from your house, to hear something new about the law. This got very important in the 1980s because our tax law changed a lot in the United States. Show the bear. So for those of us who lived deeply in the country, this was an effort. I have this animal on my back field. Some of you might have recognized it as the symbol of Russia, but it is also the symbol of my neighborhood. He is eating a bird feeder. But for those of us who live in remote areas like this, it is not easy for us to get in a car and find lawyers. We have to leave our work, leave our offices, so we can't stay in our office and work. We have to drive somewhere, we have to pay someone. That is the old system. But in 1997, we'll go back to the Prezi, if we could. Thank you, Amin. Next slide. I gave you a little bit about the history of this, and in, sorry, go back. In 1997, New York passed mandatory rules and regulations concerning continuing legal education. And the state required by rule, you show the slide, which will be slide number 3, I think. Press it down here. They passed detailed rules and regulations saying that every 2 years, we lawyers must report to the state in a very organized way that we spent 24 hours like this, going to a class in which study materials were handed out, that attendance was verified, you had to sign a sheet and sign in, you had to spend at least 4 hours every 2 years in a class on ethics. So I will have in materials on a Prezi that I will post for you these documents, so that if this were of any use to members of the Kazakhstan bar to see whether you wanted to ever have programs like this, I think our program serves us pretty well. And obviously, every bar association and every group of attorneys or accountants or other tax professionals should be entitled to make their own rules, but I felt that this was sufficiently useful for people in New York that I could tell you about it. If you could show the next slide. Yes. This is a certificate of attendance that shows that I attended a course on marketing and business development in 2013. It complies with the regulations of the state to show that I went to an accredited provider, which was the New York State Bar Association. And it shows the number of hours that I spent. If one scrolls down, scroll down on it. Side shows I spent 2.5 hours of ethical training and 2 hours of professional training. I keep this certificate. I must keep it for 4 years in case the judges who run the Bar Association want to see my verification. We'll show another slide if we could, the next one. This is the way I keep track inside my office, because we're held to very strict standards, as I'll show you on the next certification, that over a 2-year period, I'm allowed to carry forward from an earlier period 6 hours of credits. That's the maximum under the law. Then these are courses that I took, and when I took them, and I have certificates in my file, and then I show that I had 27.5 hours of CLE credits there. I only needed 24 hours, so I have 3.5 hours of remaining credits heading forward to the 2013 and 2014 reporting year. You have to report as of the month of your birthday. My report for continuing education is due in October of this year. Another slide, please. This is the formal state registration form that I have to file with New York State. I have to pay a $375 registration fee every 2 years. And so along with my payment, if you'll scroll down a bit, thank you, it gives information about me, and then scrolling down further, down at the bottom, I have to show that I completed the necessary credits, and I have to swear to the fact that this statement is true. So if you would flip that to the next slide, Now, the question is, how do I go and get courses? As I said, it is not convenient for me to drive a few hundred kilometers to go hear some lawyers talk about the tax law. So the New York State Bar Association, initially, when these requirements came in 1997, I went, why do I have to go to class? Why am I forced to do anything? Is it easy to force lawyers in Kazakhstan to do things they don't want to do? It is not easy. We want to make our own rules. We lawyers are quite independent in America. But the State Bar Association, recognizing over time that we have now internet technology, now makes courses available to us, both in lecture presentations like this, but also online, also by internet simulcast, also downloadable to your Android. You can watch them on your computer, you can watch it live. So it is now possible in your office to order up a program. If you're a member of the Bar Association, they can run sometimes $75, they can sometimes run $150 or $200, depending on how many hours of credit that you get and how important the matter is, how pressing and current the panel is. So I will show you that I go to the webpage of the New York State Bar, and I see whether there is a program that might interest me, because I need the credits. I need to get a few more credits to report. Next slide, please. And so here is you have an individual account with the State Bar Association. This is my page where it shows where I ordered up, if you scroll down a bit, it shows that in 2013 I paid my dues, I belonged to certain sections, scroll down further, and then I bought these programs. And once you get on your page, you can click on your program. If it is a remote computer program, you can click on it and it will show itself to you. You can watch the program. Let me in the next slide, please. This is an example of a program that I took right underneath the upper left in that blank space. If I were on my computer now and registered to my account, I could have the program playing. This was a 3 or 4 hour program and I could watch it. And the person who provided this program, an attorney named Codner, who is an expert on technology and law offices, provided the materials on the right, which are required by the rules of the state bar. You can't just go and listen to someone. You have to have something to study if you want to follow it. So the materials are on the right. I could watch the program. Next slide, please. And the next slide after that. And then, at the end, while the program is going on, after 45 minutes or an hour and 3 minutes, somewhat randomly, to prove that you have been going to this program, there will be a notice on the board of your computer saying, the number for this program segment is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you fill in the topic and the control number, and you initial it, and you date it. And this is the report, this is the verification that you took this course for that particular hour. And when you're done with the course, you then sign a statement saying you heard the course at the time that you heard it, and this is the one bit of low tech. You mail it off to the provider, which was the New York State Bar Association. And they, in turn, if you send me another slide, I mean, thank you. Maybe not. Is there an earlier one? Perhaps I am missing a slide to show you. It will be in the presentation when I get the Prezi up on the screen for you. New York State sent me a certificate that said, you have successfully completed the course with Mr. Codner, and you got 4.5 hours of credit, or whatever the amount of credit was, and you could put it in the bank, and you have this for your final report. Next slide, if you could. The continuing legal education for lawyers, the 24-hour requirement, also allows you to participate in programs as a panelist, to submit papers for meetings, to write scholarly articles, to, as I said, be on a panel. And in this case, you don't have to go to the New York State Bar Association to have a program organized. This particular letter shows that the judge of my county, my district, a judicial district, who was in charge of the administration of estates, called the surrogate, he invited me to be on a panel, which occurs every couple of years, and to present as part of that panel in April of this year. Now, you can imagine when the judge asks you to be on the panel, you say yes. And in this case, this panel is a 3-hour panel, and because I will be preparing materials and delivering a talk for the panel, if you flip the next slide and scroll down toward the end of me. Let's see. A little further. A little more. Right here. From 5:55 to 6:25 p.m. In April of this year, I'm supposed to deliver a talk to the lawyers in my county and cover these topics. You ask, well, how does this tie into continuing education? Because I am a presenter at this panel, and the panel will last 3 hours, and because I have to prepare for it, I get 3 hours for going to the panel, plus an extra 6 hours for being a panelist. So I get 9 hours of credit for participating in this activity. And I can report this to the state, my local county bar association, or the judge will file a report that I have done this. So this is another example of how you can fulfill your credits rather painlessly, because this panel will only be half an hour from where I live. Next slide, please. In addition, the market for continuing legal education is a competitive one. You can become a certified provider if you're if you're a law firm, if you're an accounting firm that does tax law work, if you were a law school, if you were a bar association. If you meet the tests of being an accredited provider with the State of New York Continuing Legal Education Board, you can have the right to issue proper continuing legal education credits to people who take these courses. In this case, there is an outfit called Law Line, and you can, if you wish, say you have not done your CLE, continuing legal education work, for 2 years, and you need to take courses really quickly, and you need to take them cheaply. If you go to this outfit called Law Line, if you flip down a little bit, I mean, you can take 17 hours or 17 courses in the bundle, and the whole bundle may only cost $150, and it has an ethics bundle. So if you're up against the wall and don't have time to fulfill your credits because you've been running off doing other law work or not otherwise paying attention to your continuing education, this is a way that you can do it. It's not necessarily courses in your area of the practice of law, but it's extremely useful to have this facility. In addition, while this is for credit and you will get the certificate that you give to the state to meet your requirements, Law Line also provides really quite good free lectures in your area of topic. You will not get credit for taking them, but you can go onto their website, download it to your Android, and listen to it in your car if you take a long drive. You want to drive from here to Ostina, you can have a lot of free continuing legal education credits. You may fall asleep and go off the road, but I flew over it on Monday and Tuesday. There's nothing to hit. If you go off the road on the way to Ostana, you're fine. So that is a summary of what lawyers have to do for continuing legal education. Continuing education, if you flip the slide, please, Amin. To the next slide. Continuing education was actually pioneered in New York State and around the United States by the very conscientious accounting profession. Accountants have required CLE for a long time, really probably 40 or 50 years, and they are required to do at least 40 hours every couple of years, and an additional 4-hour ethics segment every 3 years. And if you're an accountant who is certified to do valuation analysis or certain kinds of actuarial work, you have to get extra certifications beyond that. So accountants spend a good deal more time than lawyers, and they're much more organized than lawyers are as far as meeting their continuing education requirements. This is the slide of the New York State this is the slide of the New York State Education Department, which sets forth the mandatory requirements for accountants. Next slide, please. To meet the requirements of the State Board of Education in New York, the New York State Society of Certified Public Accountants, which has 29,000 members, helps as a part of its mission to provide professional learning opportunities. So this is the page in which they announced their intention to provide a goal of meeting the public with high-class practice and also educating accountants. Next slide. And just like the New York State Bar Association, they have accountants conferences where you can get credits for attending those conferences. Next slide. They also have their own resources for accounting, continuing education that they can take in their offices. And there are alternative providers which are not owned by necessarily by the accounting associations, which show the online courses that they can take. Next slide. I asked one of my friends, Ann Kummer, who's a well-placed accountant in my town, what her experience was, and she says the same as mine. She tends, along with her colleagues, to take classes in her office, which are simulcast or which are internet-based, so she doesn't have to leave her office, and it's much more efficient that way, and it's much cheaper that way. So she wrote me a little memorandum, which I put in the materials and will post. The final group of people who are required to get continuing education are enrolled agents with the Internal Revenue Service. I don't know what the system is with the tax board in Kazakhstan, but there are special professional people in the United States called Internal Revenue Service enrolled agents who are not lawyers, although they may be lawyers. They're not accountants, but they may be accountants, who are eligible to represent taxpayers before the Internal Revenue Service. They have to take a very rigorous examination. It's actually a very excellent system because you don't have to have a professional certificate or license to represent people so long as you are extremely proficient at tax law. And they give them a very difficult exam. You can also get this if you work for the Internal Revenue Service for a certain number of years in a professional capacity, Internal Revenue Service being our government tax, federal government's tax collection and administration board. You can become an enrolled agent that way. But enrolled agents are required to perform considerable amounts of continuing accounting or continuing education. I'll flip another slide. And this indicates for the National Association their efforts to set minimum standards for continuing education for enrolled agents. And the New York State Society of Enrolled Agents has even stricter requirements for the enrolled agents in New York State than the national requirements. So they have annual meetings and they have a call to conference and they have, as it will show further down, a list of speakers and presentations, and they have to sign in and get their own, they have to get their own training that way. And they are held to account the way we are as lawyers. So basically the takeaway from all this is, we say, I suppose the possible relevance to people in this room and in Kazakhstan are that we have found over time that the various continuing education requirements serve the profession well, and with it our public. Especially, I think, the accountants and the enrolled agents are conscientious about it. Many lawyers leave things off at the end and they have to go to the computer and buy a bundle. As far as how this could be organized, the system works best if you have many hundred or many thousands of people who will buy the product. So if we all need to take a course on a change in the tax law, if a few thousand people are willing to take this course online, that spreads the cost better. So particularly for CE, a continuing education that requires remote media, computers, digital access, it helps to have an association of lawyers or accountants large enough to be able to sponsor and fund and monitor these activities so that they're good to go to and that the people who use the CE programs have a good experience. And I think, particularly for a fine institution like KIMEP with a lot of smart people under one roof, that the offering of these materials to lawyers and accountants in Kazakhstan, whether or not you have a legal requirement for continuing education, would be a worthwhile endeavor if you wish to take it up. That's one of the reasons I came to give a description of how we do this in the United States. I hope this is useful to you, and these are the end of my prepared remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And if there are no questions, I hope you all have a very pleasant evening.
Sit.